Rebellious Studio presents the Mind Body Podcast with your host, Maria Angelova. Hi, Rebels. Welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria, where it is all about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. Today, it is with great pleasure to welcome my guest, Josh Sweeney, with FounderScale, who is a serial entrepreneur. And Josh, I'm so excited to talk to you about such a cool topic, the topic of scaling a business. Welcome here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Josh, before we dive into all that business talk and all the practical tips and all of that, let's hear a little bit about who is Josh. Give us 3 words that describe you and a little bit of a backstory behind each one.
A backstory, that's gonna be fun. So 3 words that describe me, I would say relentless, experiential, and growth.
All
So
right.
I think that captures a lot of me. So backstories behind that. Relentless is my word. So my Instagram is actually Relentless Founder. And so I've always loved that word. There's a book called Relentless from Tim S. Grover that's really good.
Yes.
Yeah. And like, I read the book and I'm like, man, that's dead on. Like, I feel this, like, I get it. So yeah, just staying relentless, staying on the grind, keep at it constantly for new heights is really part of who I am. As far as experiential, I think, it's all about experience. Like, I like to speak from experience. I don't like to tell people what they should do. I would prefer to share a story. And if I can't share a story that they can glean information from, then I try not to share opinions, right? Unless they really just say, hey, I need some feedback on your thoughts. So it's all about experience life, experience business, come from a place of experience. I think there's lots of people that share what you should do and what they think you should do, but never did it. So I'm always, trying to filter that out of how I share and filter that out when I hear from other people, like, did they really go through this or is it just an opinion? So just experiencing life, travel, all of that's part of who I am. And as far as growth, I'm just all about personal growth. So I go through a lot of audiobooks. I have an Audible subscription. I'm always listening in the car, going to events to grow and learn and change. So yeah, relentless, experiential, and growth are the 3 words I think that sum me up pretty well.
Yeah. It's, as you were talking about having personal experiences versus just expressing an opinion. There's a lot of coaches who kind of do what I do, right? And there's a lot of certifications out there. And I think it's so important to have the life experience of having gone through it, right? It's a great thing to read books. I am always listening to books, reading books, taking courses and so forth. But it's one thing just taking the hypothesis of what it is, and it's a completely different thing when you have life experience with it. And I was reading a book. I just started reading a new book last night. And the author said, she said something like, I'm certified by the School of Life. And I was like, that is so well said. There is no better school than the School of Life. So completely agree with you. There's nothing like firsthand experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing is it's a lot more authentic too, when you're telling a story and you've been through it, so the passion shines through. It's easier to talk about things. And you're also, a lot of times I find, at least, I'm more clear because it's a story. Whereas if somebody's trying to figure it out and make it up on the fly and form an opinion, they kind of beat around a little bit, so there's some clarity in following your own story.
Yes, there's power to that. So when you said that, I was talking to a client today, and we were talking about her growth in her body as well as mental growth. And she was saying how she's feeling more confident into what she does, and how before she felt like people were second guessing her. And she's like, now I feel like I'm staying stronger. People are not questioning me as much. And I told her, I said, you know what? There is nothing as powerful as being your authentic self. And when people see that, it really projects differently than if you're trying to make something up, rather than when you're staying true to who you are, which is, I think, kind of exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So Josh, speaking of growth being one of your words, you are that person who helps people who are growing get their stuff together. And I can attest that scaling a business is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot that goes into it. So first, let's talk like what got you into working with scaling businesses?
Sure. So for about 10 years, I had what was my first multi-million dollar company. And then I had an exit and just learned a lot of really hard lessons through that. You know, how hard it was to be an entrepreneur, went through a lot of capital, a lot of lessons learned, burned a lot of money, unfortunately went through a lot of people, learning how to hire, learning who we needed. So there's just a lot of lessons learned. And so the opportunity was to take those lessons learned and be able to help other entrepreneurs do it faster, easier, with less headaches, and really just bring that over into those other entrepreneurs' lives. And that's really part of the impact we're looking to have, is help them do it without as many headaches as maybe you would have if you did it on your own, or as I had doing it with my business.
It's amazing how sometimes those lessons in life we take, they turn into something that we do after that. The same thing happened to
Yeah.
me. Like you said, first-hand lessons.
Yeah, exactly. When you've been through it, you can share authentically and passionately, because you're like, I can tell you how that went for me, and you can decide whether that helps you or not. But it's a true story, and here it is.
What do you see with most entrepreneurs? What do you see are when they start scaling? What are the first hiccups that start happening?
I think there's some common threads. I mean, entrepreneurs, a lot of them, it depends on the industry, but I can tell you what happened for me is I'm a feet first kind of person. So you just jump in, you try to solve it, and you're like, I know what the answer is, or I have an idea of what I think the solution is. And you just jump in, right? And you spend a lot of time and money realizing that you could have gone a little bit slower. Like you could have done at least a little bit of research. And sometimes you do a little research and you're like, okay, that's enough. Now let's go jump feet, both feet in. So I think just one of the challenges is taking one step back, not trying to slow down, not trying to take away from the excitement of jumping into that new area or new lesson or new growth area for the business or the entrepreneur, and saying, okay, what research can be done up front so that we're slowing down to go faster instead of jumping in feet first, realizing there's a bunch of lessons to be learned, stop, reset, and do it again. And so we see that a lot where it's like, jump in, figure out this isn't right, reset, do it again and again. So slowing down to speed up is one thing I see that's very common. And at least it's been a thread in my life as well of doing the research a little earlier on.
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, I'll tell you one of my big learning lessons has been hiring the right people.
Yeah.
From me being a solopreneur and hiring people, I think, and tell me, I'd love to hear your opinion on that. People who work with solopreneurs, I don't think they sometimes realize the responsibility that comes with it, right? Because you're supporting just that one person. And I mean, yes, you can be flexible and everything, but there's a lot to get done. And it's just like the team is small, right? You don't have a marketing team and an IT team and this kind of team. You do it all. And you don't know where it's going to come from and what type of spice the day is going to bring today. Do you have any thoughts about that when it gets to hiring the right people for the team?
Yeah, I think that there's, at least in my experience, there's different people for different stages of the business, right? So when you're early on, when you're solopreneur, when the company's, less than 5 people, you need very adaptive people that are used to wearing multiple hats, probably that worked at other very small companies and like that, where things are changing fast and they can keep up. Because there's some people that, they worked for a large organization and they're used to having a lot of infrastructure, a lot of people to go to. And it's really hard for them to translate that into a really small company. So they may have an expertise that you need, but the speed and pace at which things are changing can be very challenging. So early on, I really like to work with people that have worked for and with other founders, and they generally get it and they identify with it and they enjoy that environment. Whereas some people, they want to wear one hat and do one thing the same way every day. And that can be really challenging. The smaller the business, I would say, the more challenging that is. And then the company always evolves, right? So you go from 1 person to 5 people to 10 people to 15 people. Well, when you're at 15 people, you start to wear less hats, right? So early on, a person may have worn 6 hats in the business and had 6 different jobs. When you're at 15, they may only have really 2. So you need a different type of person, and then you have to figure out, where to move those chess pieces around, or are they not a fit anymore? Do I need new people? So that's the thing, is when you're evolving, it's changing at a very rapid pace. And so you need people for each stage and decide, do they stay around? Do they not stay around? How does that work for the business?
Yeah. And, I can relate to that in my corporate experience. My first job was at a very big company and I did this job, right?
Yep.
And then my second job was at a much smaller company that was actually scaling. And I went from, being in the billing department to having to deal with taxation and marketing and product development and sales support. And it was like, whoa, it was eye-opening. It was tremendous experience because you get to see how all the different pieces come together. But it was a very different experience than just sitting in that one row, exactly to what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's moving at a fast pace. There's lots of growth happening. There's kind of that being thrown into the deep end and just having to figure it out. And some people love that and thrive in it, and some don't. And so I think those are the things, we have to look for as business owners. We have to decide, is this person going to be able to keep up? And that's just part of who they are, not necessarily are they qualified to do this job function. So there's all kinds of tips and tricks and techniques to hiring the right person that I think is very different in entrepreneur and founder-led companies than it is in corporate America. So we have to be careful as founders, what our processes are and where did we learn them, and do they work for our business or do they work for a larger company?
Yeah, I agree with that. And like I said, I'm learning firsthand some of those lessons.
Yeah.
Nothing like firsthand experience, going back to the start. All right. Do you have any repetitive stories that you have with founders, let's say solopreneurs transitioning, taking it to the next step, that are kind of like, wow, big aha moments that you're like, let me tell you what's coming up. Here is a tip of how to deal with it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons that I had, at least, and it still rings true for a lot of our clients, is taking the time to really work the numbers and the metrics and the budget ahead of time and see what can actually be done. So if I think back early on in my career, and what I see with a lot of founders now is, and I even see it in larger businesses that I've been part of, is kind of making up a goal. So the goal is like, I'm at 2 million in revenue and this year we're going to 7. And it's just like, where'd that number come from? And so they go tell the team, and the team doesn't buy into it because they don't know how they're going to get there. And the entrepreneur or the founder is just really excited about it. And so we like to back in and say, okay, let's look at the revenue budget. Let's look at that sales and marketing budget. Let's put it together. What got you here? What's going to get you to 7? And the numbers are going to tell a very different story, because like with what we do, we can say, well, based on the past 5 years, you've spent X dollars on cost per acquiring a client. So cool. You want to go to 7 million? You need this many dollars to get there. And the question is, where's that going to come from? Do you have that in your pocket? Do you have that in your bank account? And the answer is normally no. So I think we're very ambitious and we're goal driven, but sometimes we can set goals that are very out of alignment with reality. So it's a challenge. Like, how do you be ambitious, but also in a way that pulls people up and isn't just some crazy goal? So I see that a lot where, there's an opportunity to start with the numbers and the data instead of just thinking, I'm just going to go jump in and do this and it's going to work out. And then, if you see a pattern where you're not hitting those goals, it's a chance to step back. So that happens a lot when we're looking at kind of digging down into sales and marketing budgets and where can you really go based on your spend. But I think it's common across, a lot of the numbers as a founder.
Yeah. And you and I have spoke about this offline. We have talked about organic versus inorganic traffic and acquiring customers in such way. As technology is rapidly changing, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for the past 7 years, and it's crazy how much things are changing just year to year or 6 months to 6 months. What are some of the trends that you're observing in terms of acquisition of customers, organic versus inorganic, effective sales channels, and so forth?
Yeah. So what we see, the most common challenge we see with founders is most of them, especially in services companies, is they built the company by building relationships. And one day they wake up and decide they're going to do sales and marketing to generate leads, which is a completely different model, right? That usually they don't really have firsthand experience in. And even the firsthand experience that they do have, at least in my case, was another company that already had a lot of things going for it, right? So it doesn't necessarily translate to the founder's company, their budget, their time, availability, everything else. So what we see is like really keeping it, being able to scale up the number of relationships. The question is, how do you scale trust? How do you scale relationships? How do you get more of those, which creates more budget to move into the sales and marketing direction over time? So some of the trends we see is people trying to make that leap and jump what we call like the sales chasm, the revenue chasm, and jump way over to sales and marketing, when really it's an amplification of what's already worked well, and then moving over, having a plan to move in that direction over time. I guess going back to your question, what do we see works is anything where you can build more one-on-one relationships, one-to-many, speaking, more networking events, getting feet on the street. All of those things work, really well for founder-led companies. And those are going to work much better than trying to spend money on ads, trying to spend money on social. There's a lot of ways that you can spend money and find out that they just don't work in a small business environment based on the budget at this time.
It's interesting as you're speaking, the one thing that's popping to mind is that the things that you're suggesting are all things that take time, right? Go network with people, go meet with people. And I'm just thinking, based on my experience with working with clients, everybody wants the results yesterday. Like, I don't have time to deal with that. I just want to put a bunch of money and the clients are going to rush towards me, right? What I see in my world is like, I don't really want to work out for too long. I just want my problem to go away. And I have to remind people, how long have you had this problem?
Right.
Then it's like, oh yeah, okay. And I have to re-educate people about creating a lifestyle of wellness rather than a 30-day whatever program, bootcamp program or something like that. And I think that's very relevant with entrepreneurship, because as entrepreneurs, we are excited about our baby, right? We have all crazy ideas. We're passionate. Yes, we have those crazy goals. I have those crazy goals, right? And it's like, I want to do it everything. But what I'm finding out is I need like 3 of me to do all of the work that needs to be done, right? Okay, we need this. Well, the content needs to be created. We need that. That needs to be checked. And it's like, whoa, I already have a full-time job on top of all that. Right. So what do you do? Like, how do you now find time to networks? Where do you, take time from one thing to put it into another thing? I would say, and I've shared this with you, like, as I'm going through this stage, I'm like, whoa, like, how does that happen? And the one cool thing that you mentioned to me is you said, well, the more you grow, the same problems keep coming up. They're just amplified because of the size of the company.
Yeah, they do. I mean, the same problems keep coming up, just with more zeros is what I say. Like, you're making more money, but it's just the problem's bigger and it's more expensive to solve, right? It's another people problem or revenue challenge or operational challenge. It's harder and more complex as you grow. And, the way you solved it before won't work at the next, at 5 million versus 10 million, the way you already solved that problem. Now you're onto the new one. So it gets more expensive and complex. I did want to mention, I think there's a really good book on that called Buy Back Your Time that I just read. And that one was really good about like, how do you get more time as a founder? How do you bring in team members that are giving you the time to solve and work on the next level of challenge, instead of being stuck in the rut of the doing all the time and working in the business? So I think there's a lot of good information. There's a lot of good tips and tricks out there for the founder. And it's just the ability to, read those, read different models, find out, other people's and how other founders got out of that, and determine, what you're willing to do. Because it's a common story. Like, we hear it in the services space all the time. Normally the founder was an expert in something and they decided they were going to start a business. And now they're the expert delivering it in their business. And if you're independent, that's great. And you want to stay independent. But at some point, if you want to build a multi-million-dollar company, you can't be the expert anymore. You can't be the one doing and delivering. And they're like, well, nobody can deliver it like I can. It's like, okay, is that true? Do you need to deliver it like you do? Is there training? So there's all kinds of workarounds, but there's tons of other founders out there that have already solved that problem, right? They said the same things, they went through the same journey, and they have really good experiences to share. And all that information's out there, and it's in, okay, do you really want to do that? Can you embrace that and make that change? And that can be really difficult for experts.
And I was going to tell you that so much to me relates to mindset, because like, I love what I do. I love working with clients, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, and my clients are my babies. Like, I am protective of those people. I want to take care of them. Exactly what, you say. I think and it's like, whoa, to let them work with somebody else. I don't know about that, right? But
Right.
you also have the realization that the model that I have now is not scalable, right? In my case. So it's a very cool, problem to have. I do have to say that.
Yeah, that's always fun. I mean, that's the good thing is if you like to learn and grow, then entrepreneurship will give you more than you asked for.
That is 100% correct. I can 100% attest to that. Any tips that you want to leave with our listeners for anybody looking to scale? Any practical tips you want to leave with us? Anything to think about specifically?
Yeah, there's one saying that we use at FounderScale a lot, and it's activity equals opportunity. And so, every time I would say, every time I get out of my comfort zone and say yes to something, every time I agree to a podcast, every time I go to that extra networking event, even though I'm tired, more opportunity comes about, so I agreed to be on a panel. And so it was a great time to be on a panel, and they're like, hey, how can we help? I'm like, well, I'm looking to speak more and get on more podcasts. And two people are like, hey, I got one, come be on mine. So what we find is activity equals opportunity in all aspects of business and life. And so, you just got to get out of your chair and go do the activities, and more will come. And we find it, it's really just as basic as that. And that's what I'll leave you with.
Action is so important. We just had the mindset call last night, and we were talking about, do you go after the things that you want? And one of the reasons people don't go after the things that they want is frequently it's either time or money, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I don't have the money. So what can you do to have the money? And, we talk about the laws of attraction and going after your desires. And the important point was, well, you don't just say, I want to spend more money, and you just sit and think like the money is going to pour on top of you, right? You have to take action. And a lot of times, the bigger the things that you want, and I don't mean necessarily material things, but the more, the bigger your company you want to be. Like you said, you got to have more expense. Well, sometimes more expense is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you step outside of that comfort zone and take action to move you forward towards growing your company. So I think action is so key in any aspect of your life, wellness, growing a business, whatever it is that you want to do, that you want to see traction and momentum, action has to be there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's something about just verbalizing it and taking action, and then more just starts to come to you, so you just say, here's my plan, here's what I'm going to do. And you just, I think some people get caught up in like what to do next. And it's like, hey, just go verbalize it, go do something, go to a networking event, whatever that is, like go for a walk. If it's fitness and health, just go take one action, and then the next one will come to you very quickly. You don't have any sort of paralysis once you get out of your chair, or once you take the action, if it's at a computer, like whatever activity is to you, you take that first one and the next one comes very, very quickly, at least in my experience.
No, I agree with you. That's even when it comes to lifestyle and wellness, I tell people small but consistent actions. That's what's going to make the change. Sometimes we want to throw ourselves, and in the situation you described, sometimes there is paralysis by overanalysis.
Yeah.
Or, I'm going to commit to this huge eating only salads and exercising every day. And I've never done ever that in my life.
Right.
It lasts a week and then I'm done with it, because that doesn't feel good. So very good. Josh, any kind of favorite quote that you have that you want to leave with us? I know that was one that you just left, but any other favorite life quotes that you have, not necessarily related to scaling?
Life quotes.
If not,
so yeah, I mean, ours, we say activity equals opportunity. It's not a quote, but you know, in Jocko's book, he always says, discipline equals freedom. So I like that one. I guess ours is, you know, unintentionally a similar play on equals, but discipline equals freedom. And, you know, if you're doing things consistently, then it doesn't take up as much headspace. You know, there's all kinds of benefits to that, especially in his book. So yeah, no major life quotes, but lots of little sayings and things that help me get through my day. I know that.
I do like that. I do think discipline agrees with freedom. And I'll tell you another thing we talked about in the mindset class last night is people not showing up to their workouts, right?
Oh yeah.
To be honest with you, like if I don't show up to a meeting or to anything scheduled, I have a really good reason. Like I'm majorly sick, something is falling apart. I don't just, well, I'm tired, I'm just not gonna go. Like if I have said I'm going to a workout, I might get my butt in bed really late, but I will be there because I have committed to that.
Right.
And I have a really hard time when people are like, well, I just stayed up. What did you do? Well, I was on Instagram. Well, you know, you gotta show up. You gotta have the discipline to show up. Again, consistency is what makes the difference, whether you're growing a business or growing as a person personally.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of things that have to stay very consistent over long periods of time, way longer than we want. I can probably attest to that, right? Like it has to go consistently, daily, weekly, whatever it is, for many more weeks or months or years than we would like to see the result. But, you know, at some point you do get that result.
Yeah, that's when it's really rewarding because, you know, stayed the course. And I think that distinguishes people who are successful and people who are not. It's the consistency because yes, of course, I do want my business to become $1 million business tomorrow,
Yeah.
but that's probably not very realistic.
Yeah. You can want it or you can go get it.
You can go get it. Exactly. Action. I like that. All right. Let's see. I do have to ask you, what's your definition of rebellious?
My definition of rebellious. I would say it's going against the grain in whatever kind of arena that is, right? So if it's your personal life, it's your business, right? Like the prevailing wind, everybody else is kind of going in one direction and you're picking a different direction. I would say, you know, there's different aspects of rebellious. Like I would say that it's in the positive way, that it's picking the direction based on what you know to be best or what you think is best, but it's counterintuitive in some way to more people, as opposed to like what I would say is just like the act of being rebellious for the sake of being rebellious. I don't know how productive that is in different cases, but yeah, going against the grain and the prevailing wind and where everybody else is going because you believe in something and you have a vision that other people don't have. That would probably be a good way to look at what is, you know, being rebellious.
I like that. That is kind of exactly what rebellious means to me. All right, Josh, if people have questions, want to find you, want to follow you, what are your social media outlets, websites? What's the best way for people to get in touch?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to founderscale.com and hit our contact button and just fill it in and ask for me. And I'm happy to follow up with you. You can find me Instagram at Relentless Founder. Feel free to message or follow there. And then I'm also on LinkedIn.
Very good. With your name, I assume Josh Sweeney,
Josh
right?
Sweeney. Yeah, you'll find me. I should come up, hopefully number one.
Number one, unique. Well, Josh, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Thanks so much for the practical tips and inspiration. It's been a pleasure having you here. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them. Make sure to follow Josh. Check out his company, FounderScale. And as always, thank you for checking in. And make sure to tune in next time. Make it a rebellious one. Can't get enough of those rebellious conversations? Do make sure you subscribe, like, and share with your